This podcast is part of the No Phony Podcast Network, the home of independent awesomeness.
Like, I think clothes are optional at the popcorn stand. I don't know. It's Italy. Wolfman's got Nards. And I'm not even a scientist, but I know that's bullshit. I will Horus you right now.
Hey, Casey.
Hey, Bill.
What do you think of the movie Monster Squad?
Oh, I love it, man. I just watched it the other week on the plane coming home from one of my jobs. Really good.
First time you saw it.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
I'm a big fan of the old the old monsters, you know, the old Universal monsters.
So for you, it was seeing them back again, kind of like in an adventure?
Yeah. Yeah, and then they added a new one. I guess maybe they couldn't get the rights to the creature from the Black Lagoon, so they kind of invented their own Gillman.
Right. Gillman is the creature of the Black Lagoon, right? So it's got Frankenstein in it. It's got Dracula in it. It's got the Mummy in it, right? Were there any other Universal monsters? Yeah, there was Bride of Frankenstein, Invisible Man, I think was part of it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember they were going to make that whole dark universe?
No, I don't remember that.
Tom Cruise just came out in a Mummy movie a few years ago. Do you remember that?
Sort of.
So he was going to kick off a whole new relaunching, like a extended universe, like how Marvel does it with all of their heroes popping in and out of each other's movies and having their own standalone movies. They were going to relaunch the Universal Monsters in that way, except the Tom Cruise Mummy movie was kind of shit upon and disliked and just killed the whole thing. Like they would literally have a photo of everybody together, probably composite and, Photoshop together. But Johnny Depp was supposed to be part of this world, Angelina Jolie, and it just all died because of one movie. So I feel bad for those awesome Universal monsters because they are pretty badass. They are cool, and I grew up on them. And then, they just kind of went away. So this movie is an 80s movie, right? It's a little bit lighthearted, but it's still, a little bit, whoa, this is intense shit in a PG-13 movie. It's a movie that it seems that everybody loves. Nobody ever says they hate it, or they say, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. I hadn't actually heard of it until I think earlier this year.
Yeah, it was off my radar a little, and we have a guest today who happened to be a lead character in this movie. Who'd we talk to?
Andre Gower. This was a great interview.
Yeah, it was very good. And Andre, he's got a lot to say. He's got a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, and a lot of love for this movie. I mean, how long was this interview? I'm not sure after you edited it down how much.
Edited down, it's about an hour and a half.
Yeah, so this is a fun one.
We definitely talked to Andre a lot longer than that.
Yeah, this was definitely a lot less of an interview and a little bit more of a conversation. I remember we went down the rails on I remember we went down the road for talking about Star Wars. I'm not really even sure how that came up, but we talk about a little bit of everything.
Yeah, we talked Star Wars, Predator, which tied into last week's episode with Bill Duke. We were talking about that. Yeah, this was a really great interview. Andre has a lot to say, and it's already been released to the world that there is a date for his documentary, a release date. As of the airing of this episode, that date has already been released, and Bill and I know that release date, but we're just going to still act like we don't, and you'll find out during the interview, if you haven't heard already, when this Wolfman's Got Nards documentary is coming out. And Andre has put a lot of his life into this documentary, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he was talking about how it's not just like, hey, this is what we did when we made the movie, which is fine with me. I love that shit. I could watch that shit all day. But, he really sold it. And you'll hear this in the interview when you listen. He really sold it to something a little bit bigger than that, a little bit more about the community, a little bit more about the the fans and how passionate they are, and some of the great things that you get from being in love with some of this 80s culture. So very excited to see it.
Yeah, this was a good one, and we'll jump right into the interview as soon as I do my little plugs.
Here they come. Yes.
All right, so check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Deluxe Edition Pod. That's 1E. And then we're at deluxeedition.show with 2 E's. Facebook, Deluxe Edition, yet another pop culture podcast.
3 E's in that one, everybody. 3 E's.
Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening anywhere, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes if you can. And we're on the No Phony Podcast Network. Check those guys out. There's a lot of great podcasts on there. And anything else, Bill? Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it. This is a good interview. Let's jump right into it.
All right, buddy. No,
hey, Andre.
Should be here. How's that?
Yes, sir.
You're here for sure. Thanks for joining us today.
And where are you guys located?
We're right outside of Philadelphia. Ever heard of Reading, PA?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't play Monopoly? Come on.
The Reading Railroad, yeah. Once that Reading Railroad closed, Reading died.
That makes sense. No, so you're both there. That's cool. Because I look at everybody's backdrop. Casey, is that your actual backdrop, or is that like a Zoom backdrop?
No, Bill and I were just talking about using the Zoom backdrops earlier, and he's like, "Why would you use a Zoom backdrop?" He's like, "Your backdrop's great."
Yeah, it's very cinematic and very like I don't know. There's gonna be like a colonial.
Yeah, it's in front of my fireplace here.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. With Bill, I just want to you need to go back there and just start dropping a beat and like cranking out on the keyboard.
Yeah, I know. I got guitars.
Cool.
So I run a marketing company, so it's like everybody's allowed to see this side of my life. They're not allowed to see that side of my life.
Got it. All fair.
So Andre, we're kind of the same age. I remember when I was a kid, I remember always watching those monster movies like on TV. For me, you could always watch the old black and white Universal monsters. The Freddy's and the Jasons were real big, and I remember like Beastmaster was on TV like every single day. And I mean, I was such a massive fan of this monster stuff. Were you as well when you were young? Was it on your radar like it was on mine?
Grant, you said we're the same. You're 20. You're 28. That's awesome.
27.
We're the same. You're ahead of me. Oh, I wish, right? My back wouldn't hurt. My foot wouldn't hurt. No, I think at the time, growing up as a preteen and a teenager in the 80s was about as unique as it gets. I could probably only think of another singular decade that was as transformative, in pop culture or world affair, maybe the 50s. Because it's funny, when you're in the 80s, you only really had like 30 years of TV and movies, maybe 40 years if you really got that programming. And obviously I know movies started way before that, but we had 3 channels. It's like you didn't see 3 channels on a local, so you didn't have a lot of programming. But on Saturdays, on the either local, syndicated channel or, late night on a network, they run old movies, right? So we grew up watching those. You're exposed to them, them when you're really young, you don't know what's going on. You're just watching something that's like, ooh, there's Wolfman or there's a mummy. Creature from the Black Lagoon was always my favorite.
Same
guy. Yeah. He's my guy. All the other monsters are great. They're all, Frankenstein, Dracula, are all, from literature. Creature was something invented by the studio to kind of come up. It's, it's a little post-World War II, post-atomic age, kind of thing. I think it was an answer to, it's our Godzilla-ish, type of thing. It's like, where did this guy come from? But you still don't really, when you're super young, you just watch them and then and they go by and you may see them again. I saw, most of them, but it wasn't really a huge impact. You're just aware of them. I was on Saturday mornings, I was a bigger Kung Fu Theater kid.
Oh, really?
Just watched Kung Fu Theater all day because you wake up, you have cartoons, maybe you have soccer game or baseball practice or something. You come home and you have Kung Fu Theater in the afternoon, and then they play maybe an old Western or maybe an old classic movie. And I started watching old movies at a very young age. I was also in the industry at a very young age. So it was something that's like, you're kind of aware of this is a movie and you know how they're made, but you're watching these cool stories, and you're watching old, noirs or old Westerns. And, when your parents like certain type of movies, you get to watch stuff and it's kind of neat. My parents grew up, Western fans and, certain actors fans. And, then I got to go to the movies with my dad a lot and go to the drive-in, which was cool. So you're exposed to a lot of stuff more when you have people that are supportive of it or into it. But I was also in film and TV at the time. I started when I was 5. So you're kind of already inside of it. But then you're on Saturday morning, you're just a dorky kid on a Saturday afternoon watching Kung Fu Theater or an old, Frankenstein movie or, Revenge of the Werewolf, type stuff, which is why we have everything we have today.
That's so interesting to me because I look back at some of the stuff that I remember loving so much, and half the stuff in the 80s, in my opinion, because they didn't have the CGI, right? We had just the practical effects. We had to use our imagination to fill in a ton of the blanks.
Sure.
So to me, I think a lot of the monster movies that we grew up with were maybe a little bit more scary because our minds were sort of conjuring a lot of the fright.
Right. And I think when we mentioned the 80s being transformative, we got exposed to the old stuff because they were already archived and we could see them. But the new stuff that was coming out, if someone had a beta player or a VHS player or some weird cable thing like on TV, you could see old 70s horror movies like late at night at your buddy's house. I was never cool enough to have that stuff, but 70s horror was different, and like kind of slasher movies, kind of when it really starts gritty and raw. But 80s, it started getting into a little more psychological. You had Jason, and then I think Freddy was probably the scariest villain monster just because he wasn't real. He was in your mind. Right. But then like your mind manifested, and you're like, what? Like, no, I can run away from a guy wearing a mask. Like, I'm fast. I can run away from him. Like, Freddy, you can't get away from because he's just in your mind. So that was terrifying. And then, the great slasher movies and all that, those are fun. When you're really young, you get to watch them, when you're not supposed to at a, your sleepover birthday party with your classmates or something. But that transition of the effects and, they've been doing makeup effects for 30, 40, 50 years, but now they were really kind of changing and trying to get gross and trying to be more active and blood spurts and splatters and heads exploding. And when you watch like a head exploding for the first, like, whoa, that's amazing. And you watch it today and go, that is terrible. Because we're so good at it now and it looks super realistic, which I don't know why we celebrate like someone's, head getting blown off. Like, that was awesome. You're like, wait. But I think it was such a unique time, and we got exposed as kids to the old original stuff and then the current stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't think other mini generation. I think it was very transformative, even in cinema or genre or filmmaking in general, because we were just coming. There's a little bit of digital effects, a little bit of special effects, lighting, plates, different stuff that they'd been perfecting for a little bit, and we finally got to see that.
Yeah. I mean, as kids, like we watched or read Fangoria, like we were into the horror stuff. We liked the monsters. So it makes total sense to me that they would make Monster Squad. They make a horror movie that actually has kids as the lead. So the kids who are liking this stuff can identify with the people in the movie. Is that the idea behind the origin of it?
I think it was. And here comes the first shameless plug, but in the documentary, we go into that of where kind of the origin idea of what the Monster Squad is from Fred Decker's brain. And it was really, to paraphrase half quote Fred, he grew up watching all of those classic TV shows and monster movies on television as a kid. And he was a little bit older. Fred was just about, 10 or 12 years older, than Ryan and I, when we're making, he's very young, but still that's 10 years of more, earlier exposure of, 70s, watching old 40s, 50s monster movies. But really the origin of Monster Squad, which I love this story, is, Fred Decker said, what would happen if the Little Rascals fought the Universal Monsters?
A lady had been struck. Down where I come from, we resent it.
Interesting. Okay. So it wasn't like, hey, Goonies had just come out. We got to follow the Goonies formula.
Fred and Shane broke this script a year or two before the Goonies, you even heard about the Goonies. They started writing, I think, Monster Squad in like 85 when they were in college at UCLA. And, it was, Fred and Shane were buddies in college. Shane came to LA to be an actor. And he's a great actor, by the way, and ended up being a gigantic screenwriter instead, and then acted on the side. But he's like, "What are you doing?" And Fred's like, "Well, I'm working on this idea." And it's like, "Oh, can I try?" So they ended up writing the story together, and Shane banged out a first draft of what became the Monster Squad, and it was, this gigantic, grandiose kind of thing, and it ended up being the Monster Squad, which was, kids fighting the monsters. Had we seen kids that young, besides the Goonies, which, Goonies is great. Were they really fighting monsters? They were looking for a pirate ship. They were running away from the Pizza Brothers. It's okay. We're out there like, oh, these are Monster Squad's a little real. It's a little dark. It's a little sinister. It comes off as campy a little bit when some people look at the marketing or the idea of it, but I think that was sort of the problem why a lot of people didn't go to it as 10 or 11, 12-year-olds, because it was a little too much. And it was real and authentic and scary and dangerous. I've had a lot of fans and good that are friends now, and it's like, this was, the first time that we saw something dangerous with kids. And like, I felt like I could do that, and I wanted to be there. It wasn't campy or schlocked over or cartoonish. And it was like, really, they were like, this is really, this is my jam. And that's why a lot of kids connected with it. Not a lot of kids saw it in the movie theater when it came out. That's why it totally bombed. But, they found it on HBO a year later and at their local video store. And then they just attached to it and connected to it and really, really became a part of their lives.
Yeah, sure did. Were you part of the production from the beginning? Because you were a working actor. Were you already doing TV? You were on every big 80s show.
Yeah, like I said, I started when I was 5, doing a bunch of commercials and print work and television and movies of the week and features. And I had done a lot of television leading up to Monster Squad. And I had gone from show to show to show and then get cast in this big studio movie. It was just a regular audition process. A lot of fans know, some fans don't know. I never auditioned for the role of Sean. I actually originally screen tested for the role of Rudy because, leading up to August or whenever we auditioned for that, my body of work had been the cool kid with the awesome hair and way too much hair product and a cool leather jacket or something. And so it's like it automatically slides into that role. And you get a call like 2 or 3 weeks after your third callback and screen test where hey, you got cast in that movie that you read for. You're like, hey, that's awesome. And they're like, well, you didn't get the role that you read for. And that's usually terrible news because you usually get a lesser role. They're like, we liked you, but we want to put you in something else. And very rarely does it go the other way. And they're like, no, you got the lead. I was like, no, I wanted to play the cool kid. And because who didn't want to be Rudy? And, more kills, gets the girl, has the jacket, smokes, drinks a beer. He's awesome. I know exactly why I didn't get cast as Rudy, because Ryan Lambert went in there and rocked that screen test and there was no other Rudy. And they were like, well, we kind of like this Andre dork. Let's cut his hair off and and put him in this dorky T-shirt that became iconic and make him the insufferable know-it-all leader that's just bossing everybody around.
Look, Wolfman doesn't go to work. He's not like a guy. What are you talking about? He walks around, he wears pants. He had to wear pants because those movies were made in the 40s. He had to wear them so you wouldn't see his wolf dork. Wolf dork.
How well was the film marketed? And here's why I ask. It's totally targeted to me as a kid, but where I lived, it kind of came into my purview much later. And I feel like a lot of people around me also were like, yeah, I didn't find that movie out till a few years later. So you're saying it wasn't a big hit when it came out. Was this a situation where maybe it's like we release it in a few theaters, we don't do a national launch, or did I just miss it? Did me and my friends just somehow look the other way?
It kind of depended on where you were at the time and if you happened to catch it. And you asked about I think that the marketing campaign had a lot to do with it. At the time, mid-August, whatever, 87, it ran into a couple things that were very ripe for making it not survive in the box office in 87. One, there's a lot of movies in the summer of 87. We always thought this should have been a Halloween movie. It could have been a Halloween, but it was for kids, so they wanted during the summer where they could go on a Wednesday night instead of, on a Saturday afternoon, which totally makes sense. But we had this marketing campaign that led up to the release. That was kind of contradictory in kind of the parallel paths that it was taking. A lot of the kind of advertisements and the trailer was very dark and scary. And we also got a PG-13 rating, which pretty much killed it for the younger kind of 9, 10, 11, maybe 12-year-olds. And the marketing of it and what it looked like, the older kids that were cool, that were 14, 15, 16, they weren't going to go see a kids movie because they were cool. They were going to go see The Lost Boys, which just released 2 weeks prior to Monster Squad, which really took a lot of, teenage box office kind of but we weren't the same audience. That's definitely an older teenage audience. But the cool middles wanted to go to that one. And I think it was too scary for the young kids because the parents were like, this is PG-13. I'm not taking my kid to this movie. And I definitely don't want to sit there myself because you have to when you're PG-13. So, I've got other stuff to do on a Wednesday afternoon. And it was too kid-like for the 13 or 14 or 15-year-olds. They're going to go see Lost Boys. And what's interesting is I think they missed that with the marketing and the targeting of, one, the audience that should have gone to see it. And then two, they had this other marketing campaign, which was really weird that I think it's very innovative in a post-internet time because they had like these wanted posters. Like they were in like Wild West wanted posters. And it was like just the Mummy and the Dracula and had these really corny kind of, sayings that what they were wanting. And what was even worse is like on the poster for Dracula, it wasn't Duncan Regeer, who's one of the best Draculas of all time on camera. It was like this other like actor, like stand-in, like it didn't look anything like Duncan. It looked terrible. And it was like a call to action type campaign. Like it was just wanted posters. It just said wanted. And it's like, but it didn't tell you what it was. And of course, there's no like, URL to go to or like QR code to scan or like, there's like nowhere to go. Like what, why is this weird? Is that a Dracula? Like, what is this guy? So there's nowhere to go. And then they had the trailer, which was dark and scary, and their parents went to take it. And I think all of that jumbling coupled with Lost Boys opening with the cool kids. But then we didn't really get a lot of good reviews. Like a lot of the local newspaper and local news reviewers didn't like the movie. They thought it was campy, that it was childish, they thought it was dumb, they thought the performances were weak, they thought the effects were lame. Like there's a lot of bad reviews, like in newspapers. And at that time, being no Rotten Tomatoes, being Deadline or Entertainment Weekly or your internet blog, or podcast to talk about movies that people think are cool, you read your newspaper. When on Sunday morning, like, oh, they said this movie sucks, so we're not going to go see that. And that coupled with the fact that I always make the joke that if the marketing team for the studio really kind of understood, but I don't think they ever would have until after the fact anyway. So I'm not like, revising, their jobs or anything, because that's a hard thing to do. It's too much for the younger kids. It was too kid-like for the older kids, but you have that right in the middle, like that 11, 12, 13-year-old, maybe not as, kind of grown up 14-year-old, maybe that has a younger brother or sister that they're going to take and they'll enjoy it too, which is a very good example of that we talk about with a very well-known person now. So we made like the first tween movie. Like it really was a tween movie because it was scary, authentic. People die. There's a body count. I don't know the body count in Goonies. I know it's not ours. If you're a sheriff in Monster Squad, like you should just not go to work that day, right? And there's monsters and like there's monsters killing kids. Like Dracula, he's blowing us up with a piece of dynamite. I mean, that's we have a Holocaust survivor. We have our hero is the 5-year-old girl, which is like no one like who's doing that, which is awesome. And then these dorky kids that are the only ones that know what's going on with this historical famous monsters that are coming together for the first time. So I always make the joke, it's like, did we make the first tween movie before anybody knew what a tween movie was? And I was like, boy, if they had just captured that, like we could have made like Monster Squad 11 Breaking Dawn or something. It would have been like we would have had a franchise of like Twilight epicness or something. But I think it's unique that it went away and enough people saw it in the theater that they latched onto it, but it was gone like that. But the kids in the cul-de-sac were like, did you not go see that? I'm like, oh, and then it came out on HBO. And then they saw it in the local video store, and it started to kind of network out, and kids would tape it off of HBO and show it around the neighborhood. Or they would, tape it off HBO or just keep renting it from the video store until eventually the store just gave it to them. They're like, you rent this every day, like you just have it. Or they would steal it, and the mom's credit card would get charged like the $64.50 licensing fee or whatever it is, right? Back in the day, because they just didn't care. And they were like, this is my thing. And those are the people that became the Monster Squad OG fans. And, that were, dormant and thought they were the only kids around for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And then they finally found each other in like 2006.
Yeah. Well, PG-13, I mean, that time that the movie came out, that's interesting. So the rating was higher than the age of probably your proper target market, as you say. And I remember when it came out, it was like Gremlins got it, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom got it. And it did seem a lot worse when those movies came out. Because I went, Mom, I want to go see Indiana Jones. It's PG-13. You can't. And very strict on it, yeah.
Right, because, especially back then, parents would drop their kids off at the movie and look like, you go, I've got, shopping or, get the tires rotated or something. And, doing adult stuff. And we get to run around the movie theater and watch, movies, and then maybe sneak into the next one or buy, a half price ticket for a double feature. Yeah, they weren't able, to kind of really do that with the rating. And what's interesting is I learned years later that in the UK is a gigantic Monster Squad fan army. I mean, it is huge. It's huge in the UK. Scotland, Ireland, they love Monster Squad, and we've been there a couple of times, and it's awesome. And in the UK, they don't have PG-13, they had 15. So you couldn't see it unless you were 15. Luckily on, cable and HBO or Sky, whatever they had back then, and then video, a lot of kids found it, but they were not able to go to the theater if they were not 15. So the UK was even more restrictive of Monster, but that's one of our biggest and most fervent fan bases still today's in the UK. And we ran into that rating, interesting, because we went to London because there was a screening of Monster Squad, like a 30th anniversary year screening at the Prince Charles Cinema, which is just an awesome place to go. It's one of the key venues during Aero Films Fright Fest, big genre film festival in London. And I love those guys that run that. I love Paul at the Prince Charles Theater. I mean, it's an awesome theater. And we took our crew. Ryan and I went to London, and we just had 2 screenings and like 1,000 people or something. I mean, it was huge. And there was this little girl, Allegra, and her mom who either drove in or took the train for 2 hours to come in to see this movie because she's 11, and it's her favorite movie. And this is 2016, 2017, and this girl's 11, and this is her favorite movie. She's like, I'm gonna meet Rudy, and I'm gonna meet Sean, and I'm gonna see my favorite movie on the big screen. She's never seen it in the theater, and it's on 35. And she can't come into the theater because she's not 15. Because the 15 rating still held 30 years later. And, the theater was like, hey, we got this, it's like, can you come talk to this fan? It's like, we can't let them in. I'm like, that's BS. Like, she's coming in. Like, she can come in with me, right? And they're like, no, like, they'll pull our business license.
Wow.
I'm like, what are you talking about? It was like, she's not 15. I was like, that's a rating from like 30 years ago. It's like, it's still a thing. We felt so bad that her and her mom could not come in and see the movie that she was all jazzed up for like weeks to see, and she couldn't see it.
Even with parental supervision, she wasn't allowed.
You have to be 15.
Wow.
There's no like PG-13. You have to be with your parent or guardian. Right. It was just 15 or nothing.
Wow.
And I was like, this is insane. So we walked her in after the movie. And she was in the Q&A, and she got to hang out, and we took pictures. And she's in our documentary. She's adorable, and she's in the documentary because we got her right. I was like, you're totally in this documentary now because you weren't allowed to come in to see it. This is what I'm talking about. How this movie didn't get a chance because the kids still aren't allowed to go to see it. And it was just an interesting story about the UK, the rating, all coming in with the marketing campaign, the wanted posters. There's a couple tidbits in there that we showcase in the doc that are like, who thought of that? And it's definitely a different era. But look, they found it, and they traded around in the cul-de-sac in the neighborhood, and it caught on, and there was this kind of seething underground kind of Monster Squad fan base that no one really knew was there for about 19 or 20 years, and then it just exploded.
The movie cover at the video store is what got me. This looks scary, but there's kids in it.
Right.
Nothing else like this, in line here. So
that's a great point. A good example of why cover art is cover art. It catches your eye and like, whoa, what is this? And that original poster, that's a great poster.
Yeah.
I've signed a bazillion of them. People have it. They're, originals or old ones. I love the foreign ones. There's some great Monster Squad foreign one sheets that are just insane. Like the Italian one, there's like, she's naked. And like, who is it? Who is this? And don't get me wrong, it's awesome, but it's the Italians. There's no rating. I think clothes are optional at the popcorn stand. I don't know. It's Italy. That's why they're awesome. But what's interesting about, a lot of people don't think about it because they just love that poster so much. And I mentioned before, we're this 1987 kids movie. We fight these monsters, and there's explosions and blowing up and cursing. And our hero is the 5-year-old girl. And the hero of the movie that literally saves the world is not on the movie poster.
Oh,
Phoebe's not on that one sheet.
Wow.
And it was an interesting thing because that was a photo shoot, actually, that we went to like a parking garage and sat on the hood of a car in Santa Monica, like on a Saturday morning. And Ashley Bank, who played Phoebe, had like a commercial, something else, like something that conflicted, and they couldn't, and so she wasn't there for that photo shoot. But then I always thought, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't a photograph. Like, you took the photo as like the plate base, and then you animated the photo, like you drew it. Like, I was like, why didn't you just take a photo of her and put her in the poster? And so we've always debated, like Ashley's always debated, like we're like, why did that not happen? How will we not have the hero of the movie it's like not having Indiana Jones on the cover of Indiana Jones, or it's like a Star Wars poster, like Luke's like not there. It's like there's another kid in this that actually wins the day, but he's not on the poster. Don't worry about him. It's
not important.
Yeah. So she always we always gave her a little bit of shit for years, but they were like, that's totally unfair. Like, why are you not on the poster? She's on one poster. She's on the Australian poster, which is doesn't look anything like any of the other ones.
No.
So she's like, yes, an Australian one. I get to sign a poster that I'm actually on. Great.
Only the Australian one, though.
Only the Australian one.
I wouldn't mind having one of those wanted posters. Does anybody know where any of those things are?
Those are floating around. A good friend of ours now of Monster Squad fandom, Andrew Norris. We got in touch with Andrew, and we actually shot some of the documentary at his house because he had some cool stuff that he had collected. He actually owns Duncan Regier's cape.
Oh wow!
That he had acquired from Forrest Ackerman's estate, like during like a sale. And he's a huge monster. I mean, he's a huge movie fan, but he's a big Monster Squad fan. He's this really cool dude, and we got to go to his house in Maryland and invade like his little private domain of his collectibles. And he had one of the wanted posters, and I think like we packed it up because we used it, and I think I still have it. I think I need to get it back to him if yes. So I think he remembers that I walked out of his house with it. If he wants, I got to get it back to Andrew. It's unfair, but I think they're floating around. You can find them, but they're a little rare. I think where you see a lot of them is in like old EPKs because they came in like folders, like pocketed folders, like we had in junior high, with a bunch of press stuff, and a lot of them are folded up and put in that, and some are on just like little tiny cards in those EPKs. But it was a neat campaign, but just not. Where I see what they were trying to do, but it didn't work. It did not work. Especially when you read what they typed on the posters, which will reveal in the doc. Like, you'll understand why.
But so the movie had a slow sort of rolling start, but it did eventually build steam. 80s Hollywood. How did they not make a sequel? They must have had enough people to want to see a sequel.
No, it's all box office. I mean, back in the day, it's all box office, and that movie. Not only definition of bombed at the box office was literally a cautionary tale of, don't give a young director, millions and millions of dollars to make a monster movie, for kids because no one's going to go see it. I was like, well, that had nothing really to do with the movie or the quality of the script or the characters or the concept. It didn't. And back in the day, like if your movie did not perform in the first 3 days of opening weekend, like you were done. Like those first 72 hours, like, okay, you get another week. And then if that weekend doesn't work, they're like, you're done. Or it's like, if it does well, like, okay, maybe you get another week, because it's very expensive to keep a movie in movie theaters and keep marketing it. If that money's not coming this way, they're not going to send it out to keep it out there. And when those numbers don't reach whatever an algorithm there, whatever the actuaries with their slide rules and their pencils, were creating of what the success is based on budget and cost of P&A and print and advertising and marketing this movie, like we're pulling it. We cut our losses and go. And that's why there's no sequel. I mean, we were signed off for, contractually obligated for, those are boilerplate, right? But, sequels and action figures and Saturday morning animated, series and stuff like that. Because if it blows up and gets huge, then you're already locked in. None of that happened because the movie bombed. I mean, it was a big budget, big thing, and everybody saw it as a giant failure. And that was kind of unfortunate. I mean, because that hits you as the person that's in it, as a whole cast, and let alone the people that made it or created or wrote it or directed it, like Fred. Shane, a great piece of, fortunate timing right at the time. While we were shooting Monster Squad, he wrote this spec screenplay and sold it. And, that did pretty good. It was called Lethal Weapon. So that worked out good for Shane. Fred Decker ended up doing Monster Squad. The movie doesn't do well. So that's strike two against the director. Even though Night of the Creeps was fun and enjoyable, it just had this giant, it's a great, like, people love Creeps, right? It's a fun movie, and it's got Tom Atkins. So what's wrong with that movie? And Jason Lively. And then, Fred gets called by a giant studio and says, hey, we're doing our third installment of a giant box office hit. Do you want to direct the third installment? And he's 27 or 28 at the time. And what's he going to say? No? Like, of course you say yes to that. And it was RoboCop 3. So automatically, you go to director jail, and it's very hard to get a callback or get any work for a long time for Fred, which is super unfortunate because he's a very knowledgeable, very creative, very astute guy that just wants to make stuff. And Shane ended up, going on this other trajectory because right after Lethal Weapon, he wrote a spec screenplay that was the highest spec screenplay ever bought, The Last Boy Scout. And then he followed up with The Long Kiss Goodnight, and he was set forever. But then he kind of went dormant for about a decade because he just, different stuff there. And then he came back with my favorite Shane Black movie, which was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, yeah.
Fantastic. And literally resurrected two careers in Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer.
Was he in Predator, or did he write Predator as well? Because I know he also guested as a character in Predator.
He's, I think the story with Predator, because the whole thing with the red chicken suit and Jean-Claude Van Damme being the Predator, they shot like 2 or 3 weeks or something of the Predator with Jean-Claude Van Damme in this red, like red chicken suit. Like they called it the red chicken.
We actually just talked to Bill the other day. Yeah, he was telling us a story about that. Yeah.
Right. So he knows a lot more about it than I do, but they shot for a couple of weeks. It wasn't looking right. It didn't do good. And ironically, there's a little bit of a tie-in here. I think it was Schwarzenegger who said, look, I just worked with these guys on Terminator. They're pretty good at like effects and creature making. Why don't we give the Stan Winston guy a shot at creating an alien? And this was, kind of right at the same time. And Shane, I think, got brought in to script doctor. But then he wrote himself into the movie, or like they said, he goes, I want to be in the movie too. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't want you to write like script doctor like you and like the thing, so you got to die first or something. So like, so a lot of the quips and the jokes and the camaraderie, when you realize that Shane had a little bit of, keyboard effect on what ended up becoming Predator, you can see, if you know Shane Black and Shane Black kind of writing and scene, like you're like, that's a very Shane Black thing, like the banter back and forth between people. Especially as a unit or like one-on-one, like Shane Black writing for 2-person dialogue in a scene is probably the best out there. Like it's just, and you see that in everything that he does. Lethal Weapon, even in Monster Squad, which is the first example of it, between Stephen Mocht and Stan Shaw, the two that's just Riggs and Murtaugh to me, just reversed in the look of each guy. It's the same, you know, the burnt out cop and funny guy. It's like, it's crazy. And they have this great little banter back and forth. But yeah, then they changed the movie, and Stan Winston's crew ended up, you know, making what became probably one of the top iconic monsters, you know, as an alien, you know, that we all recognize. And if you look at the Predator build and you look at the Predator paint scheme and you get the backstory by the kid who made that, his name's Steve Wang. He also created and came up with the paint scheme for another well-known monster called Gillman and Monster Squad. So, you know, because all those Stan Winston guys worked on those two movies kind of, you know, near the same time. And Steve, you know, all these guys were these young, you know, kind of aspiring effects guys, and they just, now they're the icons of the industry. Like they are the pinnacle of, you know, creature effects, you know, and they have been for the last 25 years. And they all started out in the mid 80s and 86, you know, 85, 86, 87, making movies like, you know, Aliens and Predator and Monster Squad.
Wow, that's awesome.
So yeah, so Shane jumped in there, script doctored a little bit, got killed first, continues, you know, script doctor as they go. And I love Predator. I love that movie. I think it's a great movie. There's only a couple things I have a problem with it, but it's still fun. It kind of holds up. It's still pretty cool. And I love seeing Shane in it because he's so young. It's so young and funny. And he's just the joke teller. And all the other Predator movies are pretty good. And then look, you know, full circle, Fred and Shane get to remake The Predator, which came out, you know, a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago now. And that's a different story. I think if you had just let Fred and Shane write a script and let Shane direct it and leave them alone, you would have had a pretty bitchin' Predator movie. It might have been a little cerebral as an alien invasion monster movie, but I think the studio just stepped all over that and killed it.
Yeah, definitely didn't come out the way I was hoping it would.
No, and I was, we talked to Fred, you know, during that time a little bit what they're doing, and they shot that movie for a long time and had to end up doing a bunch of reshoots and problems, and I was like, why aren't we just making some of this like really just nitty grit, like down in the dirt, gritty, awesome, you know, kind of alien movie that's this kind of reboot of this awesome franchise. And I loved the concept because I had known a little of the like ideas that they had when they were breaking the first draft a little bit, which was really, I was like, and it was, they didn't know if Arnold was going to be in it or not. If he was, what route do we go? If he wasn't, what route do we go? He ended up not being in it, but there were some cool ideas there that they were batting back and forth. But I love the idea that what a lot of people I don't think caught in the new Predator is that it's a mental health awareness movie. Everybody's on the spectrum, which I think is sort of everybody, because it's the whole group of misfit soldiers that all have psychological problems or mental issues, and everybody just thinks they're crazy, you know, kind of PTSD vets, but they all have their own, you know, thing, including Jacob Tremblay, who's, you know, lower on the screen, had probably a little Asperger's, you know, in between Asperger's, maybe autism. And even I think the Olivia Munn character, you know, has sort of, and everybody's on, and it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And and I think that wasn't really noted by a lot of people because they wanted to see like the effects in the Predator, you know, lasering people in half and stuff. And I think they missed the story more than they saw because, you know, like the effects and the action and all that was, it was okay. I liked the story idea better with all these characters. I would have loved to see that movie and not see Predator until the end.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is, you know, that it was the twist. You have the Predator, which ends up being, it's almost Terminator-esque because the original Predator now is your ally because he's there trying to protect you from the super Predator, which is a pretty cool idea. This is how they go. They've been, and now it's a bit like a genetic, you know, engineering type of thing. That's what they go around and steal all these species. So they've been, you know, genetically modifying their own species for, you know, hundreds of, you know, just making them like these super predators, which was kind of a crazy idea too. And the only people that could defeat them were just people that you thought were batshit crazy soldiers, but, you know, were actually, there was a story behind every single one of them. And I thought everybody was actually good in the movie. And Thomas Jane was fantastic with Tourette's. I mean, it's just funny. And I think this, you know, in my personal opinion, this is not, I'm not a rotten, I'm not a tomato meter, critic or anything, just a personal observation. I think at some point the studio was like, can we do that? Like, we can't, can we focus and make fun of someone with Tourette's? And I was like, I don't think you're making fun of someone with Tourette's. I think you're celebrating this character that's giving a voice to these people that you don't normally see, except for usually in a bad light. And then, by the way, that's with the 6 other guys too. You're showing something. It's like, embrace that and then bring that into your. And I just think studios and marketing and execs and being, they just get really risk averse, and they get really shy and like, oh, this is gonna work. And a studio yet again steps on another, kind of Shane Black movie. That's why nobody likes studios, because they ruin everybody's stuff.
I know, like, Star Wars is going through that sort of shame right now with the last Star Wars series. Maybe some of the producers allegedly got a little bit too involved in this, and the fan, what we expected, we didn't get, because we didn't have really the right people driving that narrative. It was business for them.
That's right. And I don't poo-poo Disney or as a studio or a success story that Disney, the studio. I mean, they're gigantic. I mean, they're huge. They're the biggest studio out there, right? Maybe, in my opinion, because I'm an original Star Wars fan. Like, I'm an original 3 dork. In so much as fact that I got invited to the Academy, the DGA screening or the Academy screening back in '83 of when it was called Revenge of the Jedi.
Oh, wow.
So I went to the screening before it came out by like 3 months of Revenge of the Jedi, and got a bunch of merch that said Revenge of the Jedi. And of course, didn't know they were going to change the title, and I played with everything and like threw it away years later. It's probably worth about $74 million right now. I still have a little button that says Revenge of the Jedi, which is cool from that night. But yeah, I maybe the worst studio to acquire Lucasfilm to carry on that, because look, Disney's Disney. They are excellent at what they do, and what they do is license stuff and sell it. And they go wide, and they know exactly what they're doing. And they knew that we're making the Star Wars stuff, and we actually don't really care about the original fans. It's the new kids that we're trying to get in the parks, and we're doing this, and we want to sell this merch, and we're licensing everything. And once they bought it, like there was Chewbacca, like tea coasters, and like now you can buy like, a Chewbacca suit for your Chihuahua. And I mean, they licensed everything because that's revenue, and that's what they're really good at. Can't poo-poo them. I mean, it's Disney's Disney. Love Disney. Love going to Disneyland. It's amazing. It's just as that original fan, you almost wish that someone else had acquired Lucasfilm to carry on, or even let George Lucas keep me. Well, I wouldn't even say that, no. But, it misses a little bit, because you can watch those movies and realize that, they're not making it for me. I get it. They don't care about, or they're not thinking of it. They may care about me. That's a little harsh, but they're not making this for me. And all those movies did very well. So they're like, what are we doing wrong? We're not doing anything wrong. Look at our balance sheet. We know what we're doing. And all the fans are like, but we want, like, we're the dorks. Like, I get fandom. Fandom sometimes takes ownership when it shouldn't. And you should let people make this stuff. Look, if you didn't like The Last Jedi, why you want to, like, tar and feather Rian Johnson? Like, he made a cool movie, like a singular type of thing. If it just wasn't what you want, like, you don't own it. Like, you did, then go write it and get hired to direct it. Quit being pissy about something you have no control over, if that's really the thing. You can voice your opinion, because I voice my opinion. It's like, I didn't think it was great, or I like this part, but I didn't like that part. I just thought they just went real safe. The Force Awakens. Are we on Star Wars now? Like, we just went on like a Star Wars channel.
That's great. We're just saying about everything.
Yeah, and I hate to nerd out or opinionate on Star Wars, because, like I said, they make I don't know what they had to create a new word. It's not even a gazillion. They've made $1 on Star Wars stuff, and I'm such a gritty kind of down and simple one, because that's what Star Wars was. It was kind of a low budget sci-fi space opera that they had to put chapstick on the lens to cover the wheels of the land speeder. I was like, that's like guerrilla, like shitty filmmaking, and it turned into this thing, right? And some of the effects, the effects are still pretty good in the original 3, but you're like, why? Like, you had such a chance with Force Awakens to just come up with a really cool story that all we wanted was to see our heroes. That's all we wanted. In some way, like the movie could have been them sitting. It's a treasure hunt. It takes them 2.5 hours to all finally come into like the Moss Eisley cantina or something. That's all we wanted to see was everybody at the same time. And then the movie ends and we would have loved it. Like nothing happens. No lightsabers, no X-Wings. We would have loved that. We're like, oh, they're setting up what's going to happen. Like, we love this. But then we get this. It's like, it's the same movie.
Yeah.
It's the same movie. And they don't even get me on the science of that planet with the plasma. Come on. I mean, we're not even going there. And I'm not even a scientist, but I know that's bullshit. And they should have made a whole other, I rewrote it for them, but I didn't send it to them. But, because you can't poop them. They made a bazillion dollars. They know what they're doing. They have a whole world in Disneyland that people waited like 6 months in line to get into to see. It's a success. But we'd like to see different movies. But I think The Mandalorian's doing that for some fans.
I can't wait for the next season. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm hooked on to.
Yeah. Anyway, next tangent. Sorry, we got way off on some weird shit there. Sorry.
Well, before I hand it over to Casey, who's going to read some fan questions, I do have a fan question of my own because I never got the answer to this. And I learned that there's 2 things that kill the Wolfman, but I never was able to learn what the second one was because you guys didn't agree on it. And I remember, because we didn't have the internet, I remember going, shit, I just thought it was silver. I assumed there was another.
Yeah, we went on. We did like old age, falling out of a window, which he actually does, because that's kind of the thing. Like, and it doesn't, and he gets blown up, and it doesn't kill him. I think legit in the literature, anything silver you can kill a werewolf with. Like you can shoot him with a silver bullet because that's easier and louder. I think you can stab him with a silver sword, or you can beat him with a silver cane or something. I think it's just silver, and I think that's werewolf literature kind of canon, because a friend of mine wrote an awesome, fun book about werewolves. It's called the Black Goat Motorcycle Club. It's a very cool story. So, buy that book online and support Jason Murphy. It's a very cool thing. I actually want to make that movie, and I've been pitching that as either a premium event on a stream or like as a feature, because it's a very cool story, siege movie, but it's about werewolves, and it's great how they we end up beating the werewolves in that story, but it has to do with silver. And so I think you can beat him with a silver cane, you can shoot him with a silver arrow. I think we should have shot him with a silver arrow. That'd have been rad, right? Maybe we'll do that in the sequel. Not announcing that there's a sequel or anything. Sorry, don't go crazy. That's not what just happened. But yeah, I think it's anything silver, and that's it. Yeah,
it's out there now. There's going to be a sequel.
Nope. Casey, shut it. Yeah, it's called Silver Arrows, the Monster Squad 2. I'll do it. It's fine if the story's right. Everybody's asked about a sequel. They tried to remake Monster Squad a couple of times for a number of years. They were trying to reboot it. Rob Cohen, who was actually an original producer in '87, then went on to become a giant studio guy and big director of huge movies. He and Michael Bay's company were actually working on rebooting Monster Squad. And it took years. And then Universal ended up announcing the Dark Universe. And so Platinum Dunes, I believe, just, announced that, like, well, if Universal's doing their run and then marveling them and, doing a Marvel thing and mashing them up, then there's no reason for us to remake the Monster Squad.
Well, if that died, which I think it did, maybe that does open the doors again for you.
Well, everybody kind of enjoyed that they weren't doing that, I think, like the original fans. And then the Dark Universe died because they didn't do it right. What they should have actually done was opposite. They should have done them all together as an intro movie and then broke off and done one-offs instead of the other way around. Because most people, I don't think, realize that Dracula Untold, I think, was supposed to be the first Dark Universe movie. Then they're like, oh shit, we got to put Tom Cruise in the next one. We have to put Tom Cruise in the next one. And then The Mummy happened. That was cool, but like that Tom Cruise character, did you need to be like, you could have plucked that character out and the movie would have been fine.
Right.
And I'm a Tom Cruise fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. Ever since Taps, I'm a Tom Cruise fan. He's great. Just watched Risky Business the other day. Still good. And I'm so mad at COVID that we're like at this Top Gun Maverick like delay. I'm like, come on. You're taking Top Gun sequel away from me. Let's go. Wear your masks, damn it. So, anyways, yeah. So the reboot and sequels, it'll be fun. I think I was kid, with fans and talking with people. There's a really, really cool sequel story written on someone's laptop, and I'm touching that laptop right now. I think if you're going to make a thing a la, like we're talking about Star Wars, here's kind of full circle. But if you made a sequel with something that is beloved and with a loyal fan base, I think you make it, and you can do it today. Big studios won't do it, and you couldn't do it 20 years ago. But if you're making a sequel, you have to do it to that core group. That should be your focus. If you catch extra, great. But the studio mentality is, what's our widest audience? What's our screenplay have to be? Who do we have to have in it? And what does it have to, current events or, kind of politicky be to get our widest audience possible? We don't want to piss these people off. We don't piss these people off. We don't really care about the core audience because they're going to come anyway. They're fish in a barrel, right? We don't care if they don't like it. We already got their ticket. And if you focus on that core audience and make a sequel, no matter what it is, then you're smart. And I think you can do that today because there's a lot of different outlets to show your content on. As we've seen the last 8 months, like that big theater release, is that coming back? Like,
yeah,
it's like everybody's like, ooh, it's much cheaper to not do that, and we can still make more money on VOD or on now on PVOD and all this other stuff where we can charge a ton of money for our big studio movie. And we don't have to put it in our advertise. We don't have to really do as much. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think the effects of COVID are gonna bruise that a little bit. But I think if you're ever making a sequel, if you're writing a sequel, if you're producing a sequel, concentrate on that core audience first, and then go, then expand out. Don't do it the other way around, because you piss off and you kind of disenfranchise your loyal fan base, which is never smart. But anyway, next question. I know we had stuff rambling again.
You actually answered our first fan question from Elmer, and I apologize to these people. I'm terrible with people's names. Elmer Boster. The first question was, if they did make a remake, would you want to be involved with it? And it looks like you would be, and you not only would be, but you have one written.
I just wrote a cool kind of outline what I think would service. One, what we did in the first one, and then would service the fans, but and carry on the story, because it's definitely got to be a passing of the torch type thing in my mind, right? The answer to Elmer's question is yes, if the right people are doing it. It kind of depends. It's tough to say that as an actor. It's like, oh, someone's offering a role, or how are you not going to do that? I was like, it depends on who was offering us or me that, and what the script was and what the story was and what it was doing. It'd be very tough if it wasn't good, or it was kind of schmarmy or campy or lame, or completely not even a sequel, or not even a reboot or something. It'd be, if it was really, really bad and poor taste, it'd be hard to be, because I'm more loyal to the fan base because I know them so well over the last 12, 13 years than I would be to whatever producer's asking me to do it. I find myself like experimenting with this conflicted conversation. That's probably never going to happen. But if the right people, if Fred and Shane are involved, probably no brainer. Absolutely. If some really cool director that's like a huge fan, that wanted to, make it, or, Ryan Gosling was producing it or something, then absolutely. Because he's a huge fan. He's a big Monster Squad fan.
That's nice. So before we get into the rest of the fan questions, Bill had mentioned earlier about the release of Monster Squad. So it was only released on VHS like in 1989, right?
Something like that. Yeah, summer of 88, beginning of 89, something like that. Yeah.
And then it wasn't seen again, like it was never put out again after that, right?
Not in a kind of sanctioned release. It was in theaters, I think the longest run for 3 weekends somewhere, maybe probably 2 and mostly 1 everywhere else. Then he waited a year, and I think it ended up on HBO in 88, and then your local video store got it on VHS, where it just started to really catch hold. But then until it may have shown a little bit more on cable over a couple of years. I think there was a a rare kind of like cable TV run of it, like once or twice in the mid 90s, and it was cut. And of course, it was pan and scan and, bad aspect ratio and all that, which is what the VHS is. And most people have the VHS, whether they ripped it off of, not ripped it off, but, ripped it, recorded it on HBO, or bought or stole it from the video store in VHS. That's always that compressed, TV aspect ratio where you miss a lot of image in this movie. And so when the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin did that first cast reunion screening in 2006, that was the first time a lot of people, and the first time in 20 years anybody had seen it in widescreen and on 35. And because they had tracked down a print of it and showed it in the theater, and that really kind of launched this whole thing. It's crazy what happened after that event.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So after that, was there like an outpouring of letters, or how did that, it was made into a DVD then after that, right?
That was really, I honestly think, no doubt that double screening on a Saturday night before Easter, where there was, hundreds and hundreds of people there, and stayed all night and had Q&A and autographs. And we had the internet, finally, something that was attached to had the internet, and everybody could connect and realize what was going on. And Fred said something, super interesting that got picked up by bloggers and reviewers at that event. He said, look, because someone asked, like, where's the DVD? Like, how come this never been on DVD? And I think Ashley was like, well, you don't make DVDs on bombs. You just don't do that. You do now, because people just put out a DVD on everything, which is smart. But back then that didn't happen. And Fred was like, look, I think if you want a DVD, or if you want a new, kind of version of this, it's not up to me. I don't own it. Whoever the studio owns it now, it's like, send a letter, like write emails, post blogs, literally, mail a brick to them, they're like, give them something. And I'll be damned if the fans didn't do exactly that. And, awesome people like Sean Robert, wrote like 65 letters and got creative with him and made it like he was, Eugene sending stuff to the, the studio. And, I don't know if it was Sean individually or all the other thousands of people that ended up writing the studio, which ended up being Lionsgate at the time. And the next subsequent year, we started doing appearances and other screenings, and they were like, wait, we own this. Like, I think there's a thing there. We should put this out. And like a year later, we were at a convention, and there's this guy there who we all know now. Like, I didn't know who this guy was, Michael Felsher, and used to work at Anchor. And he's like, hey, I'm here. We're doing we're going to put you on camera. We're doing the special features for the Monster Squad DVD for Lionsgate. And we were at a convention. Like, I think we were at Monster Mania in New Jersey, and right across the bridge from you guys, right outside of Philadelphia, and in Cherry Hill. And we're like, who are you? And what do you do? There's no DVD. Like, nothing's happened. What are you talking about? He's like, no. Lionsgate's putting out a big 20th anniversary DVD. I've got to work. I'm getting your on-camera interviews like tomorrow night in your hotel room. I was like, no, you're not. I was like, what is happening? I think if they were doing something, someone may have called us and said, this is what's happening. Like, I don't know who you are. And we were all like, what is happening? And I ended up having to call a friend that it was in LA, and he was an agent at the time. I was like, can you call Lionsgate and find out if this is legit? He's like, yeah, actually this is. I don't know why someone didn't call anybody. And, I almost wish I was very caught off guard, and we were like, wait, we're going on camera. Like, and I looked terrible. I was like, I'm going to go stand out in the sun for a minute or two, or like get a haircut, and what is happening? And I looked terrible. And I was like, oh, I look terrible in that DVD. But Lionsgate put that out and hammered it. Like, they didn't even realize what they had, and they sold out of the first run very quickly. They made a second run, sold out very quickly, and they had to go to a third press of their something, and just sold, and then they were out, and then the movie was out of print again. It's crazy. Fans waited 20 years to get their DVD, and then it was out of print again. It was like collector's item yet again, like 3 weeks after it released. It was crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story. I was reading about that the other day. And I actually only saw Monster Squad the other day for the first time. It somehow,
for the first time? Okay.
It somehow missed my radar when I was a kid.
It, like I said, it missed a lot of people.
All right, so another fan question here from Jake Godbold. Ask Andre if he can still walk a tightrope like he did in Circus of the Stars.
Great question. I'm sure my balance is still pretty good. Walking on a wire is not the easiest thing to do, but I think it's sort of like riding a bike. I'm probably 40 pounds heavier, just as I was when I was 14, but at least. But it's a unique skill, and that's awesome that you mentioned. I was very fortunate enough to do this giant show, back in the starting in the 70s and went through the 80s, called Circus of the Stars, and it was a big kind of Christmas special where celebrities and people on TV show and movies got asked to try out an audition, and you were in the circus. And I think a lot of people thought it was kind of campy or corny, but when you're involved in like one of the bigger acts on that show, like you do a lot of work for that. I mean, it is every day for 3 or 4 months, and you get bruised and break bones and get scraped up, and you get banged up, working on something like a circus act. It is not comfortable. And I did it twice. I got to do that show twice, actually. The second time I did the low wire act, which is everybody knows the high wire, which is classic circus act. And a high wire is about 20 feet high, and the wire is taut. And the low wire is an act where the wire is about 8 or 10 feet, and it has a spring on one end, so it moves and sways and bounces and goes all over the place. So I got to do that as a solo act the second time, and just a great experience. I mean, one of the highlights of, not only kind of like my existence, but especially my professional life as a kid, of things that you get to do. Like I got to do a lot of cool stuff, and being in the circus is more than once is one of those. And once you're kind of in that world, like you get to go back into it all the time. Like you can just show up and jump on the trampoline or go up on the trapeze and do it. Because it used to all be at one individual's house in LA who had a whole backyard, which was basically a circus. And he was a famous stuntman that named Bob Yerkes, who's been in just about every movie ever. And he's actually in Monster Squad, ironically. But old famous stunt guy, circus kid himself, and he was like one of the head trainers. But they brought people from all over the world, like all the circuses all over the world, to train the celebrities that were learning their acts. It was very cool.
Nice. Can you find that show anywhere? Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find most of the episodes of Circus Stars on YouTube, I believe. Yeah.
Cool.
Or in my mom's garage on VHS.
Young people forget. Never knew how big the circus was to us in the 80s. The circus was a massive thing when that came to town. And that Circus of the Stars was a massive show when that would come on. It wasn't a series. It was a special. They would have a ton of specials.
It was an annual special. I think, like sometime during December they would air it. But, you would start in the summer. And then I think you would tape the show in October and November, and then they would cut it together for a month and then would air. I think it was CBS. It was a huge, Sunday night, special presentation thing every year. I think that show went on for like a decade or more. It's crazy. I ended up having a bunch. The time I did it the first time, I was 10, and I was the youngest person to ever do the show. And then a few years later, Amy Foster, who was on Punky Brewster, did it. And she was like 6 months younger than me. I was like, she took my title. But it's okay because it was Amy Foster, Ernie Reyes Jr., and I think it was Scott Grimes did Flying Trapeze, and probably the best Flying Trapeze act that had been on that show ever. They hammered that trapeze act. It was awesome. And they're all kids.
Yeah.
And they were really good on that trapeze act.
Very cool. All right, so we just have a couple more fan questions here for you, and this is the controversial one that Bill had mentioned before our chat. So if you don't want to answer it, just say pass, and we'll finish up. Michael Joseph says, this question might go unanswered, but I wanted to know whatever happened to Robbie Kiger. I remember an old IMDb message board that he was accused of drug use, and I noticed that the 4 screenings of the movie that I was at, no one has ever mentioned his name whatsoever, not even on any of the DVD commentary, and he hasn't worked since 1990, but I find the complete lack of mention strange.
I think there's two answers for was it Michael? Yeah. For Michael's question. The older stuff, like during DVD commentary or early screenings or whatever, and people would ask about Robbie, we just had no idea. Like we didn't know where he was. We hadn't seen him in years, so we just had no idea. We just had no answers. a few years, after that and things got rolling, I think we learned that Robbie had, I think he lived in Hawaii for a long amount of time. Ironically, I think my mom, who lives in Las Vegas, ran into Robbie's mom just randomly, in town, because I think she lived here for a while. So they connected a little bit. I don't know about, I've heard stories. I haven't seen Robbie in 30, probably 25, 30 years. So I don't really know. It's not my story to tell. I think people would love to see him and talk to him. We just didn't have any outreach or connection to him. I know I had reached out a little bit during making the documentary to see where he was, or if I can get in touch with him, because I knew one kind of convention booker that had been in contact with him. I just we never connected. So the answer to the early things when no one mentions, like, no one knew, like, we just didn't know where he was or how he was or if he's still around, or even apparently, he was living, I think, in Hawaii for a number of years, which is kind of rad. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen him. I don't know the stories. And I haven't been able to talk to him. But see, I grew up with Robbie. Like, Robbie and I are from LA, and we grew up acting, and we would probably see each other just about every other day for most of our youth and adolescence life, auditioning for the same stuff or being in the same shows. And that's why, it was cool to do Monster Squad with Robbie, because I'd known him. I didn't know anybody else in the movie except for Robbie. And so that was neat, because we grew up together. Because back in the day, even though there was a lot of kids in the business, there's not that many, and then there was a smaller amount that actually got to do a majority of the work. And, Robbie was on a bunch of TV as a kid, did some movies, like he's in Children of the Corn, which is a great horror title, very classic. I just hadn't seen him, and I don't think anybody else had known. There was no connection. There was no like outreach either way. Like, hey, I want to go to these things. It wasn't there. And I think it's unfortunate, because I think everybody would love to see Robbie, or we would love to see, Robbie, and the fans would like to see, who played Patrick and be kind of cool like that. It just didn't materialize, I think. A lot of most of the story that, is unfortunate with that time is everybody wants to see Horace, but Brent Chalin passed away in 1987. And, even before all of this kind of resurgence and this kind of, explosion of Monster Squad fandom in the mid 2000s, everybody wants, look, Rudy's the cool kid. We all know that. But everybody's favorite character is Horace, and he's the awesome character in this movie. That Ashley always said it. She said it on camera. It's great. Like, he has the best character arc in this movie of anybody, and he shows up, and everybody related to Horace. I talked to thousands of fans and say the same thing. They're like, "Look, I really, we all wanted to be Rudy, but I was really a Horace." Because I was just, I was the one that got picked on. I was a little overweight as a kid in junior high, and I was like, okay. He's like, but Horace is my man. Like, Horace is my guy. I'm like, it's a great character, and Brent was awesome. And it's unfortunate that he, unfortunately passed away, and wasn't able to see kind of the appreciation and really kind of like that deep connection that a lot of people have with those characters. And I think Robbie, it's the same thing. Everybody wants to see. Once they started seeing the squad out there, I think a lot of people, I don't know if they got tired of seeing me and Ryan and Ashley, at different places, because we didn't really kind of saturate the market or convention thing. I think we handled it pretty good. And fans are still appreciative, if we're somewhere. So I think that works. But yeah, we would love to see Robbie out there. Love to see Brent. Of course, that's impossible. And that really, really sucks. And the story of him passing is actually more tragic than most people think. And we actually cover that a little bit in the documentary. We get the true story of what actually happened. And it's awful. It's just tragic, and, shouldn't have happened. Could have been prevented, probably. It's just one of those things you're like, that sucks. Not only because he passed away, not being selfish, like he needs to be around, but he would have loved to be a part of all this. And I think the fans would have just, it's insane. They would have glommed on to, see Brent today. That'd be amazing. Yeah. That'd be amazing. Like, Horace, like, oh my gosh, that's my guy, Horace. But it's the same thing. Like, a lot of people ask where Michael Faustino is. Michael, who played Eugene, great kid, younger brother of David Faustino, who he and I are the same age, and we grew up together. So I've known Michael most of my whole life. And he got out of acting when he was still pretty young. And went to school and went off, and now he still works in the industry, but he's an audio engineer. He's a sound guy, and works on huge shows. like The Voice and American Idol. So he does big productions. He does, sound for big productions. So everybody thinks like, oh, well, if I don't see these people anymore as celebrities or actors or whatever, like then like, they faded out or wiped out. I was like, really? Maybe they're off doing like real people stuff or like,
Right.
Even better jobs than, hawking a product on, on Saturday morning or something. But yeah, I mean, you gotta, I've done a ton of stuff other than acting and, now, developing, producing, and directing, and you always act. That's the easy part, honestly, folks. It's the fun part and the easy part. Doing real people stuff and going to college and getting jobs and starting families and doing that's work. And a lot of people don't think actors and stuff actually do that shit. Like, they don't think they do that. I'm like, why not? People think I was crazy when I, through high school, and I graduated high school and I wanted to go to college. And not only did I want to go to college, I was a basketball player. I was an athlete. I always wanted to play sports, and basketball was my thing. And I'm the short white guy, and not a lot of opportunity out there, in the early '90s. But I wanted to go to college and play basketball, and so I found an opportunity situation, and I left LA, I left Hollywood, I left the entertainment industry, and I went to a school in North Carolina to play college basketball. People thought I was insane. They thought I was like, how do you give up a career? I was like, look, I can read for a sitcom when I'm 30. I can audition for something when I'm 30. I can't play college basketball when I'm 30. This is an opportunity I'm not going to pass up. So I think people kind of sometimes lose sight of that, especially back in the day. But it's I could have stayed in the industry and never worked again. There's no guarantee that you're going to get a TV show. There's zero guarantee. But if I had missed going to college and learning the stuff I learned, or meeting the friends that I met, or not playing basketball, I got to play basketball in 2 different colleges. I played Division I basketball, my junior and senior year, which is insane, and loved every minute of it. Wouldn't trade it for whatever television show you say you're going to give me.
Nice.
Again,
Rob,
sorry, tangent on that. I started with Robbie and went to Brent, but all that. But I think there's a cool story there. So hopefully that answered Michael's question.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robbie, if you're out there, man, reach out. People want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
So, all right, this is the last question, and it's a thing that you've mentioned quite a few times during this interview. Shane Picos, and I think everyone else that's a fan of Monster Squad wants to know, when is the release date for the documentary Wolfman's Got Nards?
Well, Shane, thank you. And everybody else that's thinking the same thing. Wolfman's Got Nards officially releases in North America on VOD on October 27th. So check iTunes for pre-orders. You can check Amazon for it's VOD. Obviously, you can rent or digitally download the movie. There's also physical media. If you're a collector and want to actually like hold the disc in the case in your hand, you can order that. Just go search around. I think iTunes pre-orders available at the time of this airing. If it's not, it will be. Just keep looking. And then on the 27th, whatever your kind of VOD platform of preference is, whether it's Amazon or iTunes or, Comcast or Dish Network, or, there's a ton. I have there's a whole list that we got just recently of what outlets picked it up. And then hopefully after that, it'll be streaming, and then, on cable and all this. So hopefully there'll be a long run for this documentary, because it's not just Monster Squad based. It's really about the connection that kids and fans have with film and cinema, and how that can impact their lives, and all told through the lens of Monster Squad fans. And it turned out so much better than even kind of my kind of longer view wildest dreams. And, that has a lot to do with, being fortunate enough I had a different concept, when I was thinking about making a documentary just for the fans, and Ryan and I were going to run around at conventions with a, shitty camera or something, and just talk to some fans and do it on our podcast website for like $1 or something. And lo and behold, I got very fortunate enough to run into a couple guys at Pilgrim Media Group, which is a division of Lionsgate, and ended up working with this production team there, pitching it to the executives. They saw the value in working on this because they wanted to develop some in-house stuff. And I got an awesome team with my guy, Henry McComas, and Wes Caldwell, and Shane Patterson, and Aaron Kunkel, these guys that made the movie with me. It's a very small group. And we spent just under a year making an entire documentary. We got it done, and it was amazing. And that's all the work from those production guys. And me tagging along and again being the insufferable know-it-all, telling people what to do and what needs to happen and scheduling stuff. And it was just a whirlwind of like 10 or 11 months. And we premiered at our first festival, and it just went gangbusters from there, and had a great festival run. The doc went all over the planet and won some awards here and there, which was awesome. And then kind of went dormant a little bit, almost a la Monster Squad for a little bit. It's almost like a mini recycle. And but look, we ended up with a great distribution partner, especially during these certain times where there's no theaters, no big stuff going on, with Gravitas Ventures, and they're a great VOD distributor, and they're doing everything. So I eventually I think we'll have some drive-in theater viewings. You can order the Blu-ray, you can digitally download it on October 27th. And go from there. So, we don't know what we're doing for Halloween this year. Maybe it's, it's perfect. Maybe it's great timing, cuddle up with whatever and your candy corn and whatever costume you're not going to go trick-or-treating in and watch a documentary, then followed up, watching Monster Squad on Amazon or something.
We'll help promote it, but we're definitely going to see it. I mean, that sounds amazing. That sounds like the greatest.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun. And then, talk about it. It's, like I said, it's not really, a lot of people, we've seen a lot of these nostalgic docs, in the last, 5 or 6 or 7 years, and a lot of fan docs, a lot of things. This is certainly not one of those. It really isn't. I usually explain it being that it's not a Where Are They Now doc. It's not a making of doc. And it's certainly not a straight in your face fan service. Here's the stuff all these fans just want to see and goob out for a little bit and get giddy. We do a little of that. We do that. But really what it was, it's not about us. It's not about the original movie. I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to turn the focus around on the fans, of not only that fans are our fans are awesome and loyal, but why this movie really impacted this group of people so deeply. Because I spent 10 years at conventions and appearances, meeting these awesome fans. But over time, I kept hearing very similar stories and experiences of what this movie meant to me as a kid, or now I show it to my kid, or my dad took me to this at a drive-in, and then I built a treehouse in my backyard, and we were you. And like, I had a group of friends, and we made our own squad. And I was like, you keep hearing that more and more over the years after something you thought no one ever saw. And it makes an impact on you personally. But I didn't want, you could have very easily made a movie, a documentary about how that impacted me or Ryan or Ashley or whatever. I mean, that was really the main point, is like, it's not about us. It's not about me. It's about these fans. So I wanted to turn the focus around and celebrate the fans, because they're really the only reason why this movie's still being talked about 30 something years later. There's no other reason. Like, we didn't bring it up. We don't want to bring it up as a bond. Like, why would we hash that out? Bring it up. Like, but these fans were that loyal fan base that kept it. Like, they got tethered to it whenever they saw it, and they have not let go, and they will not let go. And I wanted to tell that story. And then we wanted to broaden that of, just, kind of transcend Monster Squad a little bit and go into why either movies or cinema or art or, literature or a book or a TV show, how that impacts people a little bit. So we broadened the scope a little bit and make it very interesting, and got some great stories and traveled all over the place, and people seem to like it. So, rent it, have a viewing party with your family, or, if you're a Monster Squad fan, I think you'll like it. It does a little of that, fan service stuff, and, you get to see us, current, out of shape and old. But, you still relate to those great characters and the fans that really not only haven't changed in 30 years, they've just gotten stronger. And it's an insane story when you look at it from that perspective. Like, I'm inside of that. Like, I'm really like, I've seen these fans for the last 10 or 12 years and got to know a lot of them and kind of understood that dynamic. And that's what, I wanted to really tell that story. It was fascinating. Some of these stories are amazing. Like, some of these people are what they are today because of this movie. And I was like, that's a story. Like, that story's got to be told. It's not about us. It's not about the movie failing or being, it's like these people, like, who were these kids that, either stole the video or, got the Japanese laser disc and, like, dubbed it and gave it to their friends, or, an older brother gave it to the younger brother and passed it around, just became this thing. And people just got connected with it. Unlike anything I've really ever seen with any other, kind of movie. And look, I go I go to a handful of like horror conventions or pop culture conventions or, and there's awesome people, great fans. You've got Back to the Future, you've got X-Files, you've got, Jason Voorhees, you got all this amazing stuff with awesome fans. There's nothing like Monster Squad fans out there. And I've diligently compared and contrasted and kind of tried to analyze it from kind of like a strategic education. There's nothing like Monster Squad fans out there. They are awesome. They are connected. They are loyal, and they just keep passing on. They're the reason, like you and the reason we're talking right now is because this fan. There's no other reason. It's just because they've kept it alive and they wouldn't let it die, and they will fight you in the parking lot. They would be like, "You're gonna don't talk bad about my jam, which is Monster Squad." And I will step up and Horace you right now. Like I will. My name is Horace you right here in the parking lot of the mall.
Horace you.
I will Horace you right now. Because really, I mean, if you like, what are you going to do? You're going to Rudy somebody that's cool and like give them a side eye, and you can't Sean anybody because you're just going to like bossing them around. That's not really what that is. Like, I bossed you around. You need to go over and do that. Horace, like I said, he's the badass. He's the one that really comes up and makes a difference. And I think that's why he connected. And that's really one of the kind of experiments with the doc was also learning it for myself and the people that were involved and the other cast members was, let's learn, we can learn a little bit, like really figure out what that is. And it's fascinating that, these kids or whenever they saw it really connected with one or more of these characters and they became them. And they said, this is me. I was the Horace of my group, or I was the Patrick of my group. And I was like, I was the Phoebe of the group. My brother would never let me hang out with them. And then, I'm like that. So the movie just ended up becoming like so real to them and inspired them and influenced them in so many different ways than almost any other movie could.
Yeah. What to say? I mean, I can't wait for this video, for this movie. I want to see this.
It's good. It's hard. I will be honest with you. There's 3 or 4 points where everybody gets a little kind of misty or, kind of chokes up. But what's fascinating is, I've seen this with, a couple dozen audiences over, the festival run. And I like to stand in the back at certain points and see the reactions. And people come up and tell us after, it's like, this point really got me choked up because it reminded me of this, or reminded me of, my, older brother and I, when we watch this movie every Christmas or every Halloween. And that part reminded me of my dad who died last year. And boy, you don't make a movie with that in mind, especially, make a documentary trying to hit those things. And it's been fascinating just to even hear everybody's Monster Squad stories, but now they have Wolfman's got Nards stories to tell because of what that means to them, that we got to make this and make it for them. And because it's for them, about them, and they're in it. Like I'm in it way too much. And I try to cut myself out of even half of what it was. I was like, Henry, get me out of here. Ryan's cool. Ashley's awesome. Leave them and get my ugly mug out of there. And let more fan stuff. Let's tell these stories. And, I don't think you see a lot of, docs that are fan docs or nostalgia that they show the people that made it. We do that too, but we see the fan, like it's about the fans and you are in it. Like this is your story. And I think everybody they find friends. Like there's been people that are now friends because they saw it at a festival with each other and they bonded because they're like, wait, that was my story. And they're like, oh, wait, that's you. Oh, I'm that. And even if they're not in it, they connect with people. And I hope that's what happens after the release, that, the internet's amazing. It's so divisive. The internet is such a divisive tool, but it balances out because it's also such a connective tool as well. And I think, technology and being able to just pop in and talk with people, or, someone in the UK can watch with someone in Albuquerque, they can watch this doc at the same time together. And they can be, messaging each other on the same show. I mean, that's cool. And I hope that's what happens. And it brings the Monster Squad fandom, that group together even tighter, and shows them that there's other people out there like you, because everybody responded to the characters of Monster Squad because we were just a bunch of misfits that no one liked. And they were like, that was me. Until I saw your movie, I was the outcast. But then I found another friend who liked it too, and we've been best friends since 7th grade. And I'm like, those are, you don't get better stories than that. Hollywood can't write stories better than that. You can't even get the best writers from the 1940s to write a better story than that, right? And and that's what the doc is really about, is telling those stories, letting those people connect even on a wider and deeper level and find each other. And I hope it just goes crazy that they get to connect and find more friendships through watching the doc, or maybe it could be a bridge to other people, or figuring stuffing out for them. So I think that's I hope that's the hope. I can only put it out there to the world and have everybody respond. But we've had a pretty good response. But I will warn you, you may or may not need a tissue here or there. There's some stuff, and I don't know where that's going to affect you. There's a couple of pods that gets everybody. But that was all organic, and it wasn't, it was just an organic happening of the story that ended up being told. And you'll enjoy it. You can sit in the dark and watch it yourself. I love when people, right now we can't go to, a theater full of people and sit in it, but it really is a group experience. If you have Monster Squad fans, you watch it with your kids. That's really what it's about.
Nice. I think I'll have to watch it by myself, because I'm just getting teary-eyed just listening to you talk about it.
Yeah, it's and that's an interesting thing, because you said you had just originally, saw Monster Squad for the first time, so you're not going back as that kind of connected fan from a million years ago. You're coming into it new, so you'll get the service of the connection with the film. But what's going to happen is one of our main kind of focuses of as we were doing this. And this is where, Henry and Wes and all these guys, just really helped out. The main point was like, something's going to happen in this doc that's going to remind you of something else that has nothing to do with Monster Squad. And you're going to be like, this is where it just connected with me. It's going to be someone's story. It's going to be something that we say. It's going to be something that, you see, on the road in camera, or it's going to be some fan story at some, you're like, wait, I have that same thought for something else, but it'd be interesting. So when you see it, let's hang out again. We'll talk about it, and I want to hear. Hopefully you like it, but then I want to hear if something like that jumps out of you and then connects.
Absolutely, yeah. I love Monster Squad. I watched it. I travel for work, and I watched it the other day on a plane, and I loved it.
It's fun. It still kind of holds up. Some of the wardrobe, some of the jokes, some of the, we get a lot of stuff, that original script is, totally politically incorrect now. And it should totally, and look, there, we've been lucky enough to not be canceled. But I think if you get out ahead of it and you have that conversation with people that ask those questions, because they're viable questions. Absolutely. This was also something that was made 30 years ago.
Sure.
And, but we talk about that in the doc. We actually open up in a college class. The doc opens up in a college class with a room full of college kids that are, oh my God, they look like they're 9 years old, but they're all like sophomores and juniors in college. And, he's a great friend of mine. His name's Mike Dillon. He's a professor at Cal State Fullerton, and he teaches film studies at Cal State Fullerton, the film studies program. And he has a great line in the doc. He's like, I teach film. Like, oh, great. And so Casablanca and he's like, yeah, but do you know the Monster Squad? And they're like, no. He's like, I show the Monster Squad every semester, for the same class. And I've been a guest in his class, and we got to video us in that class, and then it's in the doc, and then we got to take the doc back to the class. So it's just this amazing connection and coming full circle with a lot of these awesome people. But I love Mike Dillon and the Cal State Fullerton, that department for allowing us to come in there. And those students, they're awesome, because there's a room full of kids who had never seen the Monster Squad. He shows it to them, and then they discuss how that movie affected them watching it, from a new late teenager, early 20s, mentality in 2016, 17, 18, 19, compared to what you thought, how movies were made, literally in your parents' generation. So it's fun stuff like that. It's chock full. There's a lot in there. It's a brisk 80. I think it's 87 minutes now. We chopped 3 minutes off, but there's a lot jam packed in there. We go all over the place. So but it's well done. My man Henry McComas, saw the vision, put the heart into it, and we put a lot of time, blood, sweat, and some tears and a little bit of blood, and a lot of road tripping and things like that. So it was just a great year of timing, of cool things to go out, and there wasn't any other 10 or 12 months that we could have made this doc and got what we got into. So we got very fortunate, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
Nice. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I know you mentioned it's available for pre-order right now, correct?
It should be, yeah. Pre-order either on Amazon for Blu-ray or iTunes for digital download. So yeah, go to that iTunes. Find the link, look on there, pre-order it. You'll be able to get it on October 27th. That's a great way to secure it. There may even be some stunt pricing going on. Maybe you can catch it at a good rate. So find it and try to get it. If not, you can VOD it. If for your PlayStation or Dish Network or Cox Cable or whatever your provider is. Hopefully, it's on there for you.
Great. And real quick before we end, all your plugs, where people can find you, website, all that good stuff.
Oh yeah, all of that stuff. I enjoy interacting with fans and seeing their stuff on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, it's at Andre Gower. On Instagram, it's at Andre Gower Official, because apparently there's some other really cool dude with the name Andre Gower out there. And please follow the documentary. It's at The Squad Doc, at The Squad Doc on Twitter and Instagram, and it's got its own website with info and links and new information as it comes along. So that's at squaddoc.com. Please follow me, follow the doc, for more information, where you can get it. Please let us know if you've got your own kind of, I call them squad stories, your own kind of story that affected you with this movie, or after you've seen the doc, please, send me a little video and post it on the squaddoc.com or squad doc socials or on mine, and I'll repost it for you. I love hearing those stories. And I think that's, what's really going to, make, kind of this doc story get around, is people connecting again with each other, either through social media or their internet or their neighborhood again. They get to walk across the street and go, have you seen this cool movie?
Right.
And I can't wait for that to happen. So hopefully everybody goes out there and enjoys it and shares it with at least one friend.
Nice. There's a podcast idea for you, Squad Stories.
It is. And there's kind of a documentary all about that too. So I was really thinking, but I was like, how can I tell even more stories? And Henry was like, we can't put any more stories in this doc. Like, it's already full. I'm like, but there's so many more great ones. And that's what, it's interesting when you make something like a documentary, it changes fundamentally and completely, a number of times as you're making it and as you're cutting it together. And so some of those fundamental elemental things that when you're writing the idea out on paper that you think you have to have and you get, and they're in there in stage 1, but they're not in there at stage 10. And you're like, what happened with the thing with and it's like, it's out. It doesn't work anymore. This whole thing just completely, it changes course. Making a documentary is an interesting process because you got to let it happen and it forms its own self. And you just got to be there kind of navigating what it's telling you to do.
Nice. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. It's documentaries
Thanks.
are one of my favorite types of movies. So I like that type of stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it, man. And we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this for us.
No, I had fun. Thanks for having me. And, anytime, hit me back up, or, anybody need anything on, social, hit me up. Hope everybody's doing well. Stay safe. Casey, Bill, thank you. I enjoyed it. I love talking about, we got off a good Star Wars tangent. That's always fun. Because, no one ever talks about Star Wars. Next time we'll go like obscure. We'll pick like, obscure movies or people that don't know, or like things like that. I've already done Starship Troopers for like 3 hours, so we can't do that again. And Showgirls is now getting finally like all of its due. And I'm like, really? Like, you didn't realize it was genius like in the theaters? Thanks. And I didn't have anything to do with it. 2 genius movies that no one got until 20 years later. I was like, way ahead of you. Genius. Elizabeth Berkley deserves a lot more credit than she got for that movie because it was all on purpose. No one realized it. But yeah, we'll talk about other movies. It's fun. I enjoy it. And as you can tell, I can ramble on very well.
Yeah, we can definitely do another show together. It sounds fun. This has been great.
Awesome, guys. Appreciate it.
Great conversation.
Hit me up anytime, and hope your listeners and your viewers enjoyed this. If you didn't, it's all Casey's fault. And Bill a little bit, but none of it's mine. No, I'll take all the fun. You guys are doing it all the time. They're like, that Andre Gower episode totally sucked. Would not be the first time, so it's not like you're breaking ground. But
no, this was great.
There's
man.
other fun stuff out there that we can talk about. But
Awesome.
Hopefully, it's, everybody loves the doc. They love Monster Squad. Please watch your show. I'll promote it when I can, and look forward to coming back.
Great,
Thank
man.
you.
We appreciate it, man.
All right, guys, appreciate it.
Have a good day, man.
Bye bye.